Well, good morning. We're watching this on both LinkedIn Live and Facebook Live, and we are all at home one way or another. From people who are locked down in India and can't even leave to buy food or medicine, to those of us in the New York metropolitan area who are looked at badly if you do leave the house for anything other than that. And many of us have children. Many of us are parents, and we're expected to parent, teach our children, and work from home or look for work from home. So we need to get through this, maybe with a little bit of sense of humor, keeping our kids stable during this, and most importantly, I think keeping ourselves stable. I'm going to introduce you to someone. Erica is a, a psychotherapist and social worker, right, Erica?
Yeah.
And she practices in New York. She has a great practice. She's an author, and I'm going to ask her to talk to you about her book in a little while. And I've asked her to come on to help you as parents understand how to parent through this. She might have some tips for kids. I'm going to let her come up with what she thinks you need to know during these difficult times when we are locked at home, isolated, and the only social we have is this kind of social unless we sit in our front yard and wave at our neighbors. So welcome, Erica. How are you?
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I'm doing well. I'm safe and well in New York City.
Well, the safe and well is all I can ask for. So that's wonderful. And you're about the fifth person who still remains in New York City.
Yeah.
All my friends have gone south, but thank
Mhm.
you for being there for us.
Mhm.
So I'm going to go off screen for a minute and let you run this. I'd love it if you would share with our watchers what they are probably thinking and what that means and what they can do to keep themselves safe and their children well.
Well, I mean, I think it's a time of stress for everyone, right? Parents, children. So I think to say that some worry, even some mild anxiety is normal at this time. It helps us to become more vigilant. It helps us to be more careful when we're a little bit worried. What I'm finding with my practice is that there are two extremes that people are feeling, adults are feeling, which is they're either catastrophizing and feeling that the world is ending, or they're feeling in denial and feeling that nothing's wrong. They can go out and do as they usually do. And the reality is both of those reactions are anxiety reactions. Interestingly, it's like the blind men touching the elephant. One's touching the tail and one's touching the trunk. It's the same elephant. So we say those are both anxiety reactions. That at this point, what we all need to be is vigilant and careful, but calm. The world isn't ending, and catastrophizing only makes it worse for ourselves and our children. Also, being in denial, we know, isn't a healthy response. So there's something in between that I help my patients as I do my sessions remotely now, that I help them to understand that, it's normal to feel some worry and some fear right now. What we don't want to do, if we can help it, is pass that fear onto our children. So we have to find ways as adults to deal with our own fears, whether it's talking to a therapist, writing in a diary, talking to friends, having a lot of digital contact with others, FaceTime or Skype, or really having a lot of social contact through digital media that helps us as adults to feel calm, so we don't then, make our children feel anxious. The other things that I can say are that we also need to be as present as possible for our children. So the concept of being present, I'll show you a book that I wrote, which is more relevant now than ever. It's called Being There, Why Prioritizing Motherhood in the First 3 Years Matters. And in truth, it also is about fatherhood or parenting. Being present isn't just being present physically, it's being present emotionally. And I think right now I'm finding that parents are getting confused about what it means to be present. So I thought maybe it would help to define what presence means for your children right now. It doesn't mean manically entertaining your children. It doesn't mean obsessively educating them. It really means being emotionally calm. It means being present for their feelings. So the most important thing right now for parents is to be able to be with their children emotionally, to check in with them every day, to ask them how they're feeling, um, to be able to listen to how they're feeling, even if it's fear and worry, and not rush to cheer them up or move them away from those sad or angry or upset feelings. But, letting them mourn the losses. A lot of children have a lot of losses right now. If they haven't lost family members because of this, grandparents, they've lost the school routine that they have. They've lost daily contact with their friends. What's so important to children is their routine, their regimen. And so they've lost that. What they've gained, however, is a great deal of access to their parents, which in a world where we are so preoccupied either for economic reasons or for ambitious reasons, personal ambitious reasons. We're so preoccupied with our professions and our jobs and our social lives and ourselves that we really don't spend that much time with our children. I think the Pew Research Trust did a study that said that working parents in America spend 90 minutes per day with their children on average. That's it. So that's clearly not enough, because we have a mental health crisis in this country with children and adolescents. So children are getting access to parents in a way that they have. Some of them have never had, where their parents are home constantly. So being present isn't just being a warm body in the room. It's actually being available to your children emotionally. And it's also doing things with your children, but not obsessively. So one of the things I tell parents that I treat is do activities with your children, but don't feel you have to entertain your children. So if you're going to do a family activity, make Play-Doh. Make it from scratch. It's easy. It's a little hard to get flour right now, but if you get flour, it's an easy recipe on the internet. Make Play-Doh. Sit on the floor and make animals out of Play-Doh and make pots out of Play-Doh with your children. You don't have to entertain them. Be with them. Play side by side with them. Bake cookies with them. That's not entertaining. Get some pleasure in the slowness and the routine of cooking together or folding laundry together, or it's in the being together. It's not entertaining children. That's most critical. Build a Lego tower without the ambition of having to make a Star Wars ship, just being there and playing side by side with them is more important than actually teaching them. Now, this is a very controversial thing I'm going to say. I'm going to have all the teachers' unions coming after me. Parents are not teachers. Teaching is a profession. It is a profession which, after this crisis is over, we are all going to have even more respect for. It is a hard-earned degree. It is a professional who knows how to teach things that you as adults have forgotten, how to do higher math, grammar. You probably don't remember sentence structure. And so you're not expected to teach your children these things. What you are expected to do is create a structured time for them during the day that they can do some of the work that their classroom teachers have assigned them. And then having one daily activity as a family that is a learning activity. What do I mean by that? Watching a video as a family on where electricity comes from. Mr. Rogers was wonderful with this. You can go to all the Mr. Rogers reruns if your child is young, because in each Mr. Rogers show, he showed children how shoes are made, how the post office system works. That's education too. So doing a family group learning activity, watching a nature special on elephants or on climate change, this is more beneficial to your children and will be a calmer activity than you manically trying as a working parent who is very disconnected from grammar and math. And you're not expected to teach your children. You are expected to be there for your children if they need your emotional support as they're learning. And I'm going to say children are not going to learn 6 hours a day like they do in school. They are going to learn for an hour and a half a day. Even my children who are in high school in New York are being told that they are going to have 2 1.5-hour classes a week. And the rest, they'll have some Zoom discussions. It's taking the expectations down a huge amount, because the more parents feel these high expectations on them, the less patient they will be, the less present they will be, the angrier and more resentful they will be towards their children. That's not presence.
Well, you know what, Erica, one of the things we are known for, even though I do cyber safety, security, and privacy, and not educating kids other than in cyber safety, security, and privacy, is that we put kids in charge often of certain things. So many of us are hoping for a vacation to somewhere when all of this is over. And, let the kids do research from us on the kind of places we want to go, beach, museums, food, whatever it is we'd like, put it together and come up with some suggestions for where that family trip could be, looking at weather and the best time to go, the kind of places you can stay, the activities that you can be involved in, and present that as a project. Now, that's a learning project as they're learning around the world. I also did something in New York City schools several years ago. And there was this big, tough boy who was there. He looked tough. He's the kind of kid who could be, fullback and for the Giants. And he was 13 or 14 years old. And the kids were there with their parents. And I said to them, "How are you using cell phones?" And one young boy said that they were teaching their grandfather English. He spoke Spanish, and they were doing it through text messages. And this big, tough boy with this little mom hanging out behind him said, "A lot of people think I want to join gangs or I want to get involved in drugs and alcohol, and I don't." He said, "So I've got this deal with my mom. So when I go to a party, I just ping her one letter, and that means that she then sends me a text message and calls me saying, 'You have to come home now. I'll be outside for you.'" And he was using text message as a way out to get his mother's support. Um, a group of kids at the British Council School in Madrid, which is run by the British government, asked us to create an app so that they could talk to their parents when things went wrong online. So even though so much of the parental communication is one-to-one, talking to each other, you're within 1 to 5 rooms or mansions, but we are within the 4 walls. But sometimes if your kids are having problems with your intensity and attention and being there all the time, they may be able to send you, and you can send them, a text saying, I'm a little nervous right now. Or you might be working all the time and don't have the luxury of doing the cookies yet, but just saying things like, I could use a hug. And sometimes that digital communication, as much as we say we shouldn't be doing it, is the brink between our kids who haven't seen us, with the exception of 90 minutes a day, and those who now see us 24/7, 365. What do you think about that?
I think that teenagers in particular are different than, pre-adolescence starts at 9. So anything between 9 and 25 is adolescence. And they're a different species, if you will. Their brains work differently. Under the age of 9, they're going to appreciate you being physically and emotionally around a lot. Over the age of 9, there may be some ambivalence because developmentally they're supposed to be having more space. So even in the smallest apartment, you can find space from one another. So I think that's important, that you understand you don't need to be on top of one another, hovering, intrusively active. I think that's my message to parents. If you have one activity a day that you offer your children, and then you structure time to just side by side play with them, you can still have there's a lot of space in that day where you're reading a book, or they're reading a book, or they're watching a TV show, or you're doing something in the kitchen. You don't have to be together all the time, particularly with adolescents, because adolescents really do need more space, and you need to respect that space. So interestingly, digital media, people are finding that it's not. I've always said that digital media, to the families that I work with, is not the devil. It's not evil. It's a thing that can be used for good or for evil. Text messaging with teenagers, even if they're in the same house, can be very effective because it gives them that little bit of distance where they can still communicate things that they might not say in person to you. So, having group chats, even if you're in the same house, trying to communicate face to face. But as the Italians say, to know whether the spaghetti is ready, you throw it against the wall. If it sticks, great. If it doesn't, cook it longer. And so the idea is,
True New Yorker.
if your children are resisting contact with you, the idea is not to push at them, but to say, that's okay. I'm here. And if you want to talk, we'll try again later. And then you throw the spaghetti later. The idea is it's like feeding your children broccoli. And that's a terrible analogy because a lot of people say, oh, my children love broccoli. Most children don't love broccoli, young children, but you keep trying to give them broccoli. So, not in a forceful way, but digital media can be used to communicate with children. I also think right now, digital media can be used to stay in contact with grandparents who you can't have contact with friends. What I'm saying to parents is to help your children and teenagers. More important than the digital learning right now is the digital socializing, because one of the biggest pieces about school is the socializing. So even if you homeschool your child, it's very important for children to have digital contact, or sometimes even homeschool children have small groups that they get together with. The idea is the socializing is the most important piece. So being able to have your FaceTime or Zoom or Skype on for your children, not for a quick conversation with their friends, but just have it on for an hour. I say to parents, leave it on in a passive way so they can watch a TV show together and comment on it. So they can make a Lego tower. I'm making a Lego tower and you're doing a puzzle, but we're in the same digital room and we can talk to one another while we're playing. It's a very different way of using digital media. And parents probably before this crisis thought, oh my God, that's terrible. But actually, it's not terrible. If you don't see your grandparent much and they're in Arizona, even before this crisis, leaving the digital media on so you can see your grandparent's face and hanging out with your grandparent, watching a show with them is kind of a cool thing for a kid and a way to have some contact. No, it's not the same as real contact. I mean, my patients are having to do digital sessions with me. It isn't the same as being there physically, but it's the next best thing. And right now it's the next best thing that we have.
I've got two grandchildren, 6 and 8. And I'm very close to them, and I'm physically close to them. They're about 5 miles away from me. And my 8-year-old grandson 2 years ago came to me. We run Cybersafety India, which is a foundation in India on cyber safety. And I was out of the country 300 days a year. And he came to me very carefully and asked me to sit down and handed me a cup of tea. And so I knew something was up. And he said, Grandma, would you talk to the children in India so you could spend more time here with us in New Jersey? So that broke my heart. So we changed a lot of how we do things. And I put other people in charge and stopped micromanaging our charitable work around the world. And now they're across town and our only contact is FaceTime. Mm-hmm. And they're stealing my son's phone when he doesn't know it. And FaceTiming me to show me the new bug they found in the backyard, and they just got a puppy yesterday. And so I said, I need a hug. And my 6-year-old grandson reached out and put his arms around the cell phone. And so I think it's a different reality, but if we're smart about it, this is an opportunity. So how do we deal with the stress of maybe you've been furloughed, you lost your job, you have
Mm.
serious financial issues, you don't know who's going to pay the rent or the mortgage or put food on your table in the next 2 weeks. How do you handle that you're trying to deal with, and how much do you share with your children, if anything at all? And how do you keep yourself from jumping out a window?
Well, I think one thing, those are two very important questions. I think maybe I'll answer this question first, which is to keep yourself calm. I think routines and very calming routines can be meditative. Not everybody can do meditation. I always recommend to patients not formal meditation that you have to learn, but being able to sit quietly and close your eyes and turn on even one of the apps. There's plenty of apps that do sort of 10-minute meditations, and you can do it a couple of times a day. You don't have to be a professional meditator. You don't have to have taken a course. Anybody can do it. Get one of the apps and sit on the ground for 10 minutes and center yourself emotionally. But there are other ways if that doesn't work for you, because there's a lot of people who say, well, I can't sit quietly and my mind is racing and all this. I'm going to say doing menial tasks is very helpful to calm one's mind, meaning things like, I love folding laundry. People think I'm nuts. I actually love doing laundry because it's just a menial meditative task. It's something that it takes me away from having to think, and I'm just something quietly. Other people cook. Other people like cleaning. Other people like organizing.
I used to like ironing, but I don't own anything ironing anymore. So.
Okay, but I mean, even the idea of taking out a piece of paper and some colored pencils and doodling, just mindlessly doodling, and none of this requires anything that you have to buy, but just getting into the routine of some menial tasks, which ordinarily might cause you stress because you have those menial tasks as an obligation on top of your work. But if you see those menial tasks as an important and valuable task in and of themselves, and you're just in the moment, mindful of just, things like breathing, things like, well, not today because it's not a sunny day in New York, but the beauty of the sun outside or watching your children play. In my book, I talk a lot about just how hard it is for us to take ourselves out of our kind of immediate worries and be with our children and really appreciate in the moment watching them play, seeing our healthy children on the ground playing, and what a pleasure that can be to just quietly. A patient once described it to me as watching the grass grow, and that's not a bad thing to be able to watch the grass grow. So I think finding ways to meditate. Exercise. Right now, exercise is important. We can't all go out. We can't all run marathons. We probably shouldn't for our health, depending our age and our physical fitness. But doing some physical exercise, even if it's stretching, lying on the ground on a mat or a towel and stretching your body, doing jumping jacks if you can, or push-ups or old-time Jack LaLanne calisthenics. I used to do Jack LaLanne when I was 5 with my grandmother. So I think finding ways to calm yourself. We know that exercise actually raises serotonin levels, which actually then reduce cortisol levels. So what we say is when you can elevate kind of the hormones that are related to moving your body and being physical, you actually reduce the stress hormones. The other thing is pets. Hugs, what you said, a 10-second hug from a person raises your oxytocin levels and lowers your cortisol level. Cortisol is your stress hormone. We don't want a lot of that for very long. We do want to raise our oxytocin levels. So hugging another human being, hugging your child or getting a hug from your child, cuddling a pet. There was an article in New York. I was so nervous because my daughter and I volunteer at an animal shelter in New York to get animals adopted. There's no animals to be adopted. People have run out and emptied some of the shelters in New York. And I thought, that's fabulous. Yeah. Two of my patients have gotten dogs this week who wanted dogs before, but were on the fence. And what I said to them is animals, pets bring up oxytocin levels and bring down cortisol levels. So if you've lost your job, and it might sound like a terrible idea, oh my God, I lost my job, I can't get a pet, the money that goes into a pet, I hear it. But the point is, the higher the oxytocin, the lower the cortisol. So, if you feel you can't afford a pet, then you got to get lots of hugs from the people around you. If you feel you can just bring one more mouth into the family, a cat, a dog, a small one that eats very little, that's helpful. The other thing is not catastrophizing. Because if we catastrophize, if we've lost our jobs or been furloughed, if we feel we will never work again, the internet is filled with apocalyptic, this is the end of the world, we will never be the same economically. It's just not true. As a New Yorker, I know how resilient we are, but as Americans, we're very resilient. And you will work again. You may not work tomorrow. You may not work next month, but you will work again. And that's important. So there's a balance, a dance we do between being mindful, meaning folding laundry and being in the present and being able to meditate, but also being in touch with the past and the future that helps us to stay calm. The past in terms of what has helped us to get through tragedies and adversities in the past. We've all had adversity. What has worked for us personally in the past? That memory, what we call working memory, of what has worked for us in the past, helps us to deal with the present. And having an eye on the future and knowing that this is not going to last forever also helps us to deal with the present. The one thing, the most at-risk population for me right now, even more than a parent who's lost their job, who may have perspective on both the past and the future, are teenagers, because they developmentally cannot connect at a certain age, particularly middle adolescence, which is about 14 to 17. They cannot see past today. They do not have a sense of the future, which is why there's such a high suicide rate in teenagers. They cannot see past the adversity of the present, meaning if they are socially excluded or they are embarrassed or humiliated at school, they cannot see that that is not a feeling that's going to last forever, that they will have friends, that they will have a good life past this moment. I worry about that's the most vulnerable population for me, because we have to remind them as parents that this is not going to last forever. That's hard to do if we ourselves are in such an anxious state that we can't remember this is not going to last forever.
Well, great advice. And we do a lot with teens. They are my real experts and the ones who guide me. So when I testify before Congress or go on Good Morning America, I go armed with insights from the kids who are right in the middle of all of this. And I found that when you deal with teens, if you keep them busy, that's something. And they all have a passion. Their passion may be saving the rainforests or rescuing cats or dogs or helping on mindfulness and meditation and wellness. It could be helping children in Afghanistan go to school. They choose their passion. And then we put them to work by pairing them with charities who are doing that work. And most of the charities now are doing a lot with virtual volunteerism. And even if they're not working for the charities, they can become engaged, learn more, and do their own video public service announcements, do their own ways of raising money and awareness. So our Your Family at Home will have a lot of volunteering and raising awareness opportunities for teens who have always been my best. I wanted to raise one thing, and that is we are seeing crimes and sexual exploitation of youth from about 8 to 18, when we call it something else, online. And as the kids are more engaged and less engaged with their social lives, their friends and hanging out in the park or their sports or whatever it is they're doing offline, they're all online and often alienated, isolated, stressed, depressed. And as such, they are sitting ducks for the bad guys. And they may go into the bathroom or their bedroom and take a topless pic and send it to somebody because they asked them to or because it was their own idea. And we're seeing that getting into the hands of the sex traffickers who then blackmail the kids. And this happens to boys and girls in different ways, but it's happening a lot more. And so the more we can keep our kids engaged in understanding their value and that they are loved, even if you're busy, even if you're stressed, even if you're trying to find a new job, even if you're trying to save the world with your current job, the more they realize that they are loved and there are opportunities and there's a future, as much as that's a hard thing for them to understand, the safer we'll keep them online and in life. I want you to do two things for me, Erica. I promised I wasn't going to keep you more than a half hour, but I'm lying because it's a half hour. But would you hold your book up so people can read it? And I'll post a link to Amazon. So being there, and I think that's so crucial, especially now. So I hope you will come back and give us a whole bunch of short videos that you do on your own LinkedIn and Facebook lives with us that we can post on the new site, Your Family at Home, which hopefully will be up by next weekend. We're typing as fast as we can. And it'll have activities and it'll have mindfulness. We're working with Art of Living, which is one of the largest organizations in the world, on making these things available for free online, and stretching and ideas and funny cat videos, whatever's going to get us through this. But what one thing do you want to leave our viewers with as they are looking at being home for a certain period of time that we don't know? We don't know if it's going to be 2 weeks. We don't know if it's going to be 6 months. And so without that, we're sort of in limbo. How are we going to get everybody through this? How are we going to keep our sense of humor? How are we going to keep our sanity while we do this? Even if we have the right mindset, it's a challenge.
Create something every day. And it doesn't need to be something extraordinary. Actually, it probably isn't going to be extraordinary. And I mean, cook something, bake something, paint something, write a poem,
fold laundry,
fold laundry in a creative way. Do something creative every day. Write in a diary. I mean, it doesn't matter. The smallest things can be creative. And if you have children, have one daily creative thing that you do with your children. Have a big art bucket. You know, you can go online to Michael's or one of the craft stores and just buy a whole bunch of art supplies and sit on the floor. It's not about entertaining your children. It's about being with them and creating together. So pull out the finger paints, which you probably haven't touched in years. Pull out the watercolors, pull out the clay, make Play-Doh, bake cookies, anything that's creative. One small creative task a day to make you feel you've engaged your children, and also it helps us as adults. So yeah, one creative thing a day, and it doesn't need to be big. It can be very small.
I love that one. And how can we get past the last question? How can we get past the guilt of taking care of ourselves?
Well, again, I'm going to use the airline analogy. You can't take care of anybody else if you deplete yourself. As you know from working in the developing world, there's something called maternal depletion syndrome, which is when mothers give everything to their children and they often die. I mean, it's not that that's going to happen here in America, but, the idea is if we don't provide for ourselves, which is enough sleep, good food, activities during the day, whether it's exercise, something that regenerates us as adults, we're more impatient, we're more resentful, we're more angry, we get more depressed. So if we want to have the resources to give to our families, we have to fill up our tank first. Very important.
Wow. I can't think of anyone who could have said it better. So we need to be there, and I'm going to order your book. I knew all about it because all of my friends love it. And I thought I didn't have to do that anymore because my son's 45 and my daughter's 40, but apparently I do. Grandparenting, you're always there because you can't help it. But Thank you so much. I appreciate it, Erica.
Thank you, Patty.
Last minute and a Saturday morning. Thank you so much. And anybody in the New York metropolitan area or anywhere now that she's doing them online, you need help. You know how much she knows. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank
Be
you very
well.
much.
Be
Okay, you
safe.
too. Bye-bye.
Bye bye.
Bye.